Today we're going to show you how to save a little bit of money on a technician and install one of these on one of those. So this story started with my good friend John Anderson from W Wheel, who pretty much asked if I would install this GPS on his 1190. I said, John, I'm kind of busy running a business. He said, I don't really care. I don't trust anyone else. I want you to do it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it, but at least I'm going to get some video out of it for our viewers so I can show them how to get this stuff installed without much worry. So the goal of this video is to kind of show you guys what an amps pattern is, how to look for mounts, and where to find the wires that actually power these things with the key. And some people, they can do this stuff with their hands tied behind their back. It's not that big of a deal. But there's other customers that they don't really understand wiring. They don't really know where it is. And this video hopefully will help you guys understand where to find things and kind of demystify how to hook up a GPS on one of these models. Now, we're going to be showing you wiring pieces that are basically universal on most KTM big bikes. So at the front and the rear, they have pairs of wires that we're going to be showing you that are either always on or come on with the key, and that's what we're going to use to power this guy right here. So follow along. We're going to take off some parts on this thing and hopefully show you how easy this really is and explain a few things along the way. So first things first, determining the bolt pattern on the back of your GPS. Now, most modern GPSs adopt what's called the amps pattern. What is the amps pattern? I'm glad you asked. So we have this handy dandy website right here that's going to explain it for us. And what it is a rectangular array of holes that is 1.5 inches by 1.19 or 38 millimeters by 30 millimeters. And this is a hand-me-down from the military. I'm not entirely sure where it came from, but that's where that pattern was adopted from. And there are a lot of units these days that have adopted this pattern from wherever it came from. So you can see on the back of these, we got the Trail Tech and the Garmin. They're both using the amps pattern, and they're using it in a direction that I like to call horizontal. So I like to call the wider of the two when they're in this position horizontal, and I call this vertical. That's not an official term, but that's just the way I've kind of determined to explain that pattern when it is in its orientation. So right here, another thing you'll notice is that ram mounts, they have their two-hole patterns. That's those two holes right there. So the ram mounts, like the balls that they have in various different configurations, is actually those two holes right there. So ram mounts will adopt that pattern right there. So once you've determined your pattern, the next thing you need to do is figure out your mount. So we have an example of a few mounts here. This is a piece we make that fits on the front of BRP vibration isolation damper mounts for handlebars. They use these two pieces right here, so that allows you to kind of take a base and mount a base in either the horizontal or vertical positions, or we also have these two holes right here for ram mounts and things like that, and some various other holes for whatever else you determine you may want to put on there, like a phone or whatever. This mount right here comes with the Trail Tech Voyager Pro, and this is basically a handlebar clamp. It goes around the handlebars. These work okay, but if you don't have another mount, you can clamp this on the handlebars right here. On this particular bike, it won't work, but on a typical bar, it'll go over there, and you've got various degrees that you can hang this, and there's some rotation available in this part right there. But for this build, what we're going to do is use this KTM mount right here. So this is an older KTM mount that John had on his bike that we're just going to utilize. Now you'll notice that the amps pattern is both in horizontal and vertical. So KTM was clever enough to kind of include both patterns in there so you can put something in both portrait and landscape. Now we've seen things like TomToms and Lowrances use a vertical amps pattern when their GPS is in landscape and vice versa. So you have to determine exactly where that is when shopping for your mount. So again, in this case, we're going to use John's mount, but we have mounts like this, mounts that come with kits, things like that. The next thing you need to determine is exactly whether your holes are through hole or whether they're threaded. So these two right here, both using the amps pattern in a horizontal pattern or landscape, if you will. You can see these two are both the same and they are through holes. So these are designed for a bolt and a washer and a nut to go through something. So in this case, it's not an issue. We can basically take that, put that right up there. We can go through with a bolt and put a nut on the back side, and Bob's your uncle. If you have a mount that is threaded, like some of the billet aluminum mounts, like a Hondo mount, sometimes you might have to come from the backside with a bolt. So you need to determine whether it's possible with your chosen mount to come from the backside if something has threaded holes. So those are things to watch out for when shopping for mounts. One more big one to watch out for is double threaded mounts. So you can see these two items right here. This is a Vanash mount for a 790-890 Adventure, and this is a Hondo mount for a cell phone that is generic. And both of these are pretty generous in the holes that they give you or the mounting options, but they are both female threaded. So how do you put these together? So you have to be careful when choosing, different mounts and adapters as to whether you can actually attach these things together. So Vanash was clever enough to actually make this adapter piece right here, for example, that will bolt on right here. And since the Hondo mount has holes in the center, you can actually run bolts through this, bolt this adapter plate to this, and then you can bolt this Hondo mount to these two center holes right there. So these are things to keep in mind when looking for mounts as well, so you don't get your parts shipped in, you get excited about putting it on, and all of a sudden you run into these issues like that. Now we're going to address the mount itself. So this is a Voyager Pro mount, and it has all these accessories that tap into various points on the bike. So unlike a Garmin GPS is just designed to be a GPS. It has one mount, no auxiliary functions, that's it. A Voyager Pro is designed with the motorcycle industry in mind, so it can tap into your coil for RPM signals, it can tap into your radiator for water temperature, and this other piece right here is for buddy tracking. So some of these items we're really not going to use for this build on an adventure bike, because adventure bikes already have RPM, they already have water temperature. So we don't really need those inputs, so we kind of subsequently don't need these wires down here. So for the buddy tracking, we're going to keep the buddy tracking because John wants that. Yeah, he doesn't need the coil. Now you can actually use these two things if you want something separate. If you don't like the way the stock dash is displaying your water temperature or your RPMs, and you like the way the Voyager Pro does it, then you can certainly use these things. You just need to go down and wrap these around your coils and then put this in your radiator. So we don't really need to show you that stuff in the video. The instructions are pretty good on that. For this build, we're just kind of going over how to power it and things like that. These are pretty self-explanatory where they go, and you just run these down to the radiator, plug that into the radiator, and you've got your water temperature, wrap these around the coil, you've got your tack and your RPM. This is for buddy tracking, we can put that anywhere. And then this guy's for power, which is just basically a hot in the ground. That's pretty simple. That's what we're gonna show you in this video of where to find the correct accessory outputs for those that are behind the headlight. So this is for power. The buddy tracker plugs into one of these. The instructions tell you which one is actually specific. And then this guy sticking up right here is just ambient air temperature. All right, at this point, we're going to start showing you how to take the light bezel out so we can get at those accessory wires that are kind of hidden behind there. So there's going to be two pairs that we're going to show you, but you got to pull the windshield off and some other pieces. So follow us right now and I'll show you how to pull these off. It's not that hard. Okay, first we're going to pull the windshield. It's just 4 bolts and they're number 30 Torx. Next, we're going to remove 6 bolts. Now there's 3 on each side. So one is here, right in front of the turn signal. One is here, this is a different kind of bolt, and then one is kind of hidden right here. So we're going to remove all 6 of these. Once all those bolts are out, you can actually move this up. Now be careful, there's a little tab that kind of points down that tucks down into another tab in the plastic right behind it. So just pick this straight up. And what we're going for is the pivot bolt for the headlight right back here. So we're going to remove these 2 on either side, and that should release the headlight. Now that we've navigated into the deep, dark recesses of the headlight shell, it's really not that complicated, is it? not that scary. So we have the headlight plug right here, which is easy to unplug. You just lift the tab and remove the headlight. You saw me do that. And typically on almost all KTMs, you'll find 2 pairs of accessory wires. So this is listed accessory 2, ACC 2. And then we have accessory 1 right here. And accessory 1 right now is tied into the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter. Sometimes you'll find these free in the rear of the bike as well. And what this means is you have a brown and a colored wire and a brown and a colored wire. KTM typically uses brown for their ground wires. In the US, we're used to seeing black, and a lot of other Japanese bikes are used to seeing black, but on KTM, they use brown. And on these accessory pairs of wires, you'll find yellow red and you'll find black red. Yellow red is always on. There is always 12 volts to this. This is basically connected straight to the battery. That's why the cigarette lighter adapter has those plugged into it. Accessory 2, the black and red, these always come on and off with the key. So when you turn the key on, it gives power. When you turn the key off, it takes power away. So this is what you want to use for the GPS. This is perfect because most GPSs are programmed to turn on when there's power and turn off when there's no power. They usually give you a 30-second countdown or something like that. While we're here, consequently, if you're ever searching for the heated grip plug, it's this white one right here with the dummy plug in it. So how do we get the power wire into the headlight shell cleanly? Well, there's kind of a neat way on this bike. We're going to rotate this out of the way for now. We've already removed the 3 bezel screws for the dash. These are T25 Torx. And basically just pull it out. And this piece back here is kind of a soft rubbery piece. So we're just going to put that down through there and put it back together. And because this is soft and rubbery, it won't really hurt the wires. And we can just put that back in, and the plug just pushes the wire right up above it, and we can put our screws back in, rotate this back down, and we're into the headlight shell now. Now we're ready to start physically attaching the wires. So our first dilemma here is we have these 1/4-inch spade connectors that are female that come on the KTM. And then we have these typical types of connections right here that you find on KTM's turn signals and other things. Trail Tech likes to use them too. And obviously these are very different. So we want the red wire to go to the black and red wire here, and the black wire, which is the ground, to go to the brown wire on KTM, which is ground. So how do we hook these up? Well, Trail Tech has another lead that goes on to this that's just wires, and because we're so close, we don't really need to do that. So we're just gonna cut these right here. And then what we wanna do is crimp on these types of connections right here. So this is a male spade connector that will fit these really nicely. And what this is this is an Ideal product. So there's the part number right there. You can probably find these on Amazon. We have a local store that we buy these from. Sometimes you can also find these at Home Depot. So these are basically insulated disconnects that are for number 22 to 18 gauge wire. Make sure you don't get the blue ones. The blue ones are for a larger gauge wire. So you get these, and this is what you end up with. And these fit the KTM accessory wires really well. So they actually, the insulation, the rubber insulation they have actually fits in there. So if you actually cut this zip tie, you can push these together and it's a great connection. So right now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut and strip these and crimp these on. These are just your run-of-the-mill crimping pliers you can get anywhere, Home Depot, electronic stores, anything like that. Nothing special. It's always a good idea to do a bit of a tug test to make sure that they don't come off. Now that we have these spade connectors crimped on, we're going to remove this zip tie right here. These zip ties just keep these covers from getting scooted back, and we want to move them back. So we're going to expose these, and we're going to plug the red into the black red. We're gonna plug the ground into the brown. And we're pretty much done. Well, everybody, that's it. I really hope this video showed you how simple this can really be. I know a lot of people, just the idea of hooking something like this up, if they don't understand wiring, it can be a little bit daunting. But with very few tools that you've seen in this video here, you guys know that you can do it yourself. And we just basically showed you how. It's really not that many nuts and bolts. Taking out this light is not that hard. And what we're not going to do in this video is show you how to put everything back together, because you're pretty much, if you've gotten this far, you know how to put it back together. We don't need to drag this video on and on showing you that stuff. So we just kind of want to show you the fundamentals, where to look for the correct wires, the correct color of those wires, and basically how to run things and get your GPSs mounted, and knowing how to shop for mounts. So if this was helpful, it really helps us if you guys subscribe and like and share and do all that stuff that I'm supposed to ask you to do, but it really does help us. So thanks guys for watching, and gals, and we'll see you in the next video. Well, that's it, everybody. I hope it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought you thought it might be for me to do this.